If you're a fan of one-pot dinners, then you are going to love this one. We use a combination of vegetables, sausage, and pasta to create a complete dinner in no time at all. Welcome to the Salted Pepper, where we cook for real life using real food and we keep it real simple. And today we're gonna make a sausage, pepper, and pasta one-pot meal in the Ninja Foodi. I'm using the 6.5 quart, but you could do this in the 8 quart, and I believe you could even do it in the smaller one, which is the 5 quart. I don't think you need to make any changes. The first thing we want to do is get our sausage browned up some. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the lid, turn the Ninja Foodi on, sear saute high is what we want, and we're going to let the pot heat up with about a tablespoon or 2 of olive oil, or you could use any kind of oil that you like. That's about a tablespoon or so. Then we need to get our sausage ready. Now I've already prepped most of it, but I wanted to show you how I do it anyway. Now you could slice it with a knife, that's fine, but I find it a lot easier to do with scissors. So what I have here is Italian sausage that's in a casing. I have 2 different kinds. That's just my preference. I have a sweet style Italian sausage and a hot style Italian sausage. You could use all hot, you could use all sweet, or a combination like I'm doing here. So what I like to do, instead of fighting with a knife, which will go through the sausage, but then at the bottom where the casing is, it can be sometimes hard to get it cut all the way through, even with a really sharp knife. So what I like to use is a pair of kitchen shears, and they're clean, obviously, and I just slice the sausage. Now for this recipe, and I do it on the diagonal just because I enjoy that look, but you don't have to. For this recipe, I really like keeping the casing on the sausage instead of taking it off because I think it gives an added little bite and more texture to the end dish. But if you wanted to use a different type of sausage, you certainly can. You can take it out of the casing, or if it doesn't have a casing, just get like bite-sized pieces. All right, so when the pot is hot, and I want it to be pretty hot before I put this in, we're gonna brown up the sausage for a few minutes. We don't have to cook it all the way through, but we do wanna get that browning. What that does is not only add flavor to the sausage, but it also adds flavor to the dish because we're going to scrape off, we're gonna deglaze the pot and scrape off any brown bits, which are called fond, on the bottom of the pot, and that brings more flavor into the dish. So I wouldn't skip this part. I really, really would brown the sausage up a little bit. All right, let's see. I think it might be hot enough, so let's go ahead and put it in there. And it is sizzling. I'll get all that out. And that is about 1 pound of sausage, maybe a little over. It was 5 lengths of sausage. Now, with this recipe, it's one of those things. You can cut everything in half, no problem. You could increase the amount of sausage. You could even add chicken to this, which I think would be amazing. If you wanted a chicken and sausage pasta, you would just want your chicken to be cut in about 2-inch dices kind of thing. You know, so chunks, bite-sized chunks, so that they'll pressure cook in the time that we're gonna go under pressure. All right, so I'm just gonna separate these so that they get brown on the bottom and let them go for 5 or 10 minutes. And I'll toss them around a little bit as they're cooking. Meanwhile, let me go over the vegetables we're using, or I'm using, because you can switch it up if you want. So let me grab this up here. What I have here, this is a sausage and pepper pasta dish, but I always add onions to it. I think that's great, but you could omit them if you didn't like onions. What I have here is 2 green peppers, 1 red bell pepper, 1 yellow bell pepper, and 1 orange bell pepper. That's what I choose to put in because I like all the different colors, but you could use all green, all red, you know, any combination that you want will be perfectly fine. And you don't have to even add 5 in if you wanted to just put 4 in, perfectly fine. And they're cut in about a 1.5-inch strip or so. I wasn't too exact. And then I have 2 Vidalia onions that I sliced, and they're in about maybe a 1/2-inch to 1-inch strips. Again, don't need to be too exact about that. We're not going to add those in quite yet because if we went under pressure for 4 minutes, like we're going to do to get the pasta cooked, those vegetables will become very, very mushy and not very good in the dish. So what we're going to do is brown the sausage, remove the sausage, saute up the vegetables just to your liking. So this is where you can completely control how you cook them. If you want them softer, cook them longer. If you don't want them as soft, cook them less time. We're getting some nice browning on here. Now, if the pot is spitting at you with the oil in the bottom and then the grease that comes out of the sausage, turn your heat down to medium. Perfectly fine if you want to do that. But this browning here is exactly what we want to see. All right, they're looking pretty good right now. So we're going to go ahead, leave the pot on, and scoop out the sausage. And I use a slotted spoon because I want the grease to be in the bottom so that we use that to saute the vegetables. All right. Now, I always like to salt and pepper my vegetables. You can do this however much salt and pepper you want to use, but I use about a half of a teaspoon of black pepper and between a half and a whole teaspoon of sea salt. I'm going to go ahead and use a whole one here. So that's 1 teaspoon of sea salt, half a teaspoon of black pepper. Again, you can, customize that. And that is sea salt, not table salt. Very different. All right, so now with the vegetables, once I salt and pepper them, I just want to toss them around a little bit and then leave them alone. And I've tried this recipe a few ways. One way is to broil, which worked, but it took longer than the sear saute. So I always want to go with what takes the least amount of time. So what I'm going to do is let these vegetables sit in the pan for about 5 minutes. I'm not tossing them around anymore. I want them to brown on the underside, on the bottom. They're not going to get any browning on top. So after 5 minutes, I'm just going to toss around and get a little more browning on the vegetables. Make sure the vegetables are cooked the way you like them before you remove them from the pot, because that's the last time they're going to get cooked, okay? We will go under the crisping lid for a few minutes at the end, but it's not enough to cook the vegetables. So make sure that they are cooked the way you like them before you remove them from the pot. All right, so let's go ahead and give them a toss, see how they're doing. I'm not getting too much browning, honestly, but they smell good. They were starting to cook on the bottom. All right, so let's just leave them alone. They will reduce quite a bit as they cook down. So I'm gonna leave them alone for another 5 minutes. Meanwhile, let me talk about the rest of the ingredients that we're gonna put in. All right, so here I have 8 ounces of penne pasta. And I know a lot of people in a lot of my recipes, they will comment, can I increase it to a pound of pasta? Really, unless you're feeding like 12 or 15 people, you do not need to increase this. This is the perfect ratio of pasta to the other ingredients. Really, honestly, it makes a ton. This recipe makes a ton of food. But if you did want to increase the pasta, you need to double your liquid. Everything else could stay the same, but you need to double your liquid to be able to, get it soft enough. So 8 ounces of penne pasta, 1 can of fire roasted tomatoes, 1.5 cups of beef stock, 1 bulb of roasted garlic, which is definitely optional in this dish, but oh my gosh, does it add a great flavor. About a teaspoon or so, this was 3 cloves of garlic minced. 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. Again, that's an optional ingredient, but really, really balanced everything out so beautifully. I encourage you to use it, or some sort of a sugar substitute would be fine. 2 tablespoons of balsamic vinegar, and then our spice blend. I tested this recipe several times, and I used less spices in the first test, and it just did not carry the flavor that I was looking for. So this might seem like a lot of spices, but it really, really worked out perfectly. What I have here is 1 teaspoon of fine grind sea salt, a half of a teaspoon of black pepper, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 2 teaspoons of dried basil leaves, and 2 teaspoons of Italian seasoning. And then an optional ingredient, which I just loved in the dish, was a 1/4 teaspoon of red pepper flakes, but totally optional. If you don't want that extra spice, don't add it in. It's perfectly fine. Then we have 6 ounces of tomato paste, which just helps thicken everything up. This dish is so good. Oh my gosh. So the vegetables look like they are done to me. Let me give them a little stir around. Yes, I can tell that they're all soft, but not too soft. Some are softer than others, which is perfectly fine and expected. But that looks really good. That's how I like mine. You could cook them longer or, again, not as long. Totally up to you. I'm gonna go ahead and put them back into here. Let's move this over this way a little bit, make it a little easier. Then I'm gonna go ahead and add in my 1½ cups of beef stock. Now nothing's stuck to the bottom of this pan, I can see that, but just as a precautionary measure, go along the bottom with something that's, you know, okay to use in the nonstick ceramic pot. And actually there is one little piece here stuck. I don't know if you can see that in the camera, but it was just one little piece. And that one little tiny fleck could trigger the water notice. So make sure you do this anytime that you saute in the pot. So I'm just gonna move that around. That looks really good. All right, let's go ahead and get our sausage back in. Our penne pasta. Our fire roasted tomatoes, garlic, brown sugar, balsamic vinegar, the spice blend, and the bulb of roasted garlic. So when you roast garlic and you want to get the cloves out, because we don't want the paper in there, just take your fingers and squeeze the bottom and they will start to push out of the top. And then I just make sure I don't have any paper on my fingers and just grab them out. Whoops. Now I still have the Ninja Foodi on, the sear saute. If you were gonna take longer than I just did to dump in the ingredients, let's say you did not measure them out yet and you needed to do that, turn the Ninja Foodi off, because if you put the liquid in, I was just making sure, I thought I got a piece of the paper, but I didn't. If you leave the liquid in the bottom and you're constantly sauteing and it starts to burn off, you might end up with not enough liquid. So if you don't prep your ingredients ahead of time like I did, you might want to turn it off for a minute until you're ready to go. All right, so go ahead and give all these ingredients a nice stir around. You want the pasta as much under the liquid as you can. Oh my gosh, it already looks good, but wait till you see the finished pot. It's just amazing. All right. All right, so once you stir all the ingredients, and you can see I've already got some boiling and stuff going on, add your tomato paste right on top, okay? Do not add it in before you stir though. You want the tomato paste on top, because the tomato paste can thicken the liquid too fast and could trigger the water notice. Now put your pressure lid on, turn the valve to seal in the back, and then we're gonna select pressure on high is what we want. The time is gonna be 4 minutes, and hit the start button. All right, so the pin in the back just popped up. Yours might be silver or red, depending on what model you have, but you can still see it saying pre. Or if you have the older Ninja Foodi model, it's going to be spinning around. Perfectly normal for that to happen. So when the pot comes up to the right temperature, then it will start that countdown of 4 minutes. Now let's talk about pasta choices, because maybe you're not a fan of penne pasta, or maybe you don't have it on hand and you want to substitute something else. That is perfectly fine. There we go. So it just took about a minute. That is perfectly fine to do. However, all of the ratio of ingredients is based on, and the timing especially, is based on the penne pasta. So if you wanted to use, let's say, spaghetti, instead, and you needed to take your time down to 2 minutes, then in the beginning when you're browning the sausage, brown it longer so that it is cooked almost all the way through, because it may not cook in that 2 minutes of pressure cook time where I know it cooks in the 4 minutes of time. So those are the kinds of things to think about when you're making changes to ingredients. So the same with chicken. Chicken will cook in about 2 minutes. So if you made them into bite-sized pieces, you could use a different pasta and go 2 minutes and it would be fine. If you're using an angel hair though, you would need a 0-minute pressure cook time, which would be okay. But you would need to make sure that all of your ingredients are cooked through beforehand so that you don't end up with raw sausage or raw chicken. So I hope that helps. I hope that makes sense. But feel free always to use the ingredients that you have on hand. And if you have any questions, you can always email me, louise@thesaltedpepper.com. All right, so it took about 5 minutes to come up to pressure. Then we went under high pressure for 4 minutes. We're just about finished that time, and now we're gonna allow the pot to naturally release its pressure for 2 minutes. And that means do nothing. You can leave the keep warm on, but just do nothing until this counts up to 2 minutes. Once it counts up to 2 minutes, you're going to switch the valve over to the vent and let the rest of the pressure out. Now this recipe is not a big deal to do an immediate release with, but anytime I'm making pasta, I try to get a little bit of a natural release in there so that you don't have any of the liquid kind of spewing out. So it just gives the pot a few minutes to kind of calm down so it's not boiling so heavily. So 2 minutes and then we will release the pressure. We're gonna grate up some cheese, get it on top and air crisp. All right, the pin just depressed, so that means we can open up the lid. Do that away from you because it's gonna be really steamy. All right, so you see how the tomato paste is still on top? That is what we want to see. We don't want it to be down in the dish because it could trigger the water notice. It might get too thick, but now we wanna stir it all in. So go ahead and stir everything in. Oh my gosh, this looks so amazing. And it smells so good. And don't forget to add in your veggies. See what I mean? It makes a lot. Let's see how many cups. There's a marking on this pot here somewhere, so I can tell you. So it makes like 10 cups. It's quite a bit. Oh my gosh, that looks so good. Okay, so now let's talk about 2 different ways that you can serve this. Obviously, it's good right now. You could put it on a plate, shred some cheese over or not, and it'd be perfectly fine. What I like to do though, because it's just me and Jeff here, I like to take little cast iron pans. Well, so I'll put this in the fridge, right? Let's say we've eaten it once and we're gonna have some leftovers. And I just scoop out enough to give 1 serving in one of these containers here, one of these cast iron, doesn't have to be cast iron, anything that's oven safe. Then I top it with cheese and I pop them in to the oven until the cheese is really nice, bubbly, and brown. So I can do that individually because we, again, are just 2 people here and this is tons of food for us. We can freeze it and then have individual servings. However, if you're a large family and you don't want to do it that way, what we're going to do today is just put the shredded cheese on top and air crisp, okay? But before we do that, you want to taste for flavor. This is a great time to make sure that your pasta's done correctly, your flavors are good. You know, if you needed to add salt or any other seasonings, which you shouldn't have to if you use my seasoning blend. Oh my goodness. Oh, that's fantastic. A little spicy, but that's how I like it. You don't like any spice, use sweet sausage instead of the spicy sausage and omit the red pepper flakes. But oh my gosh, that's amazing. Wow. All right, now my penne pasta is perfect. It's al dente, it's not too done. If you like softer pasta, you could do a longer natural release or just let it sit with the lid on in the keep warm position and it'll continue to soften up. But for me, this is perfect. So now I'm gonna go ahead and shred up my cheese. What you top this with is completely up to you. I'm gonna use a combination of mozzarella, pecorino romano, and Parmesan. Those are just my choices. You could use provolone, that would be delicious. You could use really any type of cheese that you like. So I have 4 ounces of mozzarella. With mozzarella, you wanna use the type of grater that's got large grooves. For harder cheeses, like the Parmesan, you're gonna use a smaller grater. And I kept this in the refrigerator until just before I wanted to grate it, because otherwise it's kind of difficult to do. Cold cheese is much easier to grate. Or you could use the bag. This is one of the recipes that really, the bagged mozzarella is perfectly fine. Or if you wanted to get fresh mozzarella, you know, that's in water, you could do that too and just put little dollops of it on there. That would be amazing and beautiful. You could stir in fresh basil right now if you want it. That would be fine. All right, that looks good. Mix it around here. I'm gonna spread an even layer over the top here. All right, looks good. No need to preheat because, you know, we're not gonna take all that out to take the time to preheat or anything. I'm gonna select the air crisp button, but honestly, you could do air crisp or broil or even bake. It'll be just fine. And I'm gonna take the temperature up to 400, the time down to 10 minutes. And hit the start button. Now I will let this go uninterrupted for about 5 minutes, and then I'm gonna check it to see how the cheese is browning, because you just wanna go as long as it takes to brown and make that cheese melt and be nice and bubbly. And then we're done and we're ready to eat. All right, so it's been 5 minutes air crisping. Oh, wow. That looks gorgeous. That looks gorgeous. But you know what? I like my cheese a little browner than that, so I'm gonna keep going. But now I'm gonna check it every 2 minutes. All right, now that looks incredible. That is beautiful. The cheese is brown and bubbly, just how I like it. But if you don't like your cheeses brown, obviously stop it at the 5 minutes. Totally up to you. If you don't like cheese, don't add it on top. It's delicious without it. All right, let's go ahead and dig in. Oh my gosh. All right, let's get that on top. Oh, my cheese fell off. Some of that cheese there. All right, look at that. Oh my goodness, so good. And so easy to make. All right, I'm gonna let it cool just a minute before I taste it so I don't burn my mouth, but it looks delicious and it smells delicious. All right, let's go ahead and taste the pasta. Make sure that it is perfect, which I already know it is because I tasted it before. Perfectly cooked. Perfectly cooked. All right. The sausage. Amazing. And the vegetables, the peppers still have their texture. This is unbelievable. It is a little on the spicy side, so please omit that red pepper if you don't like any spice and use all sweet sausage, and then it will be perfect for you. All right, I hope you enjoyed this one, and as always, make it yours and make it delicious.